Twitter @AfricaMilani.
Mandy in Marina de Gama saying, "Morning Africa, what a lovely version of the national anthem. Held my arm to my chest and cried. I'm now off to vote later, then volunteer at an outside station." Mandy, have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. Well, this past weekend saw Sydney, the major political parties holding their final rallies ahead of the elections this week. And here to reflect on what they offered, Mbasa Mvenene is a political analyst at Walter Sisulu University. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, sir, and morning to the listeners at home.
It was a final push. Did the politicians, in your opinion, offer lasting messages for the electorate, who some will start voting today with the special votes at 9 o'clock?
Well, I would say that for instance, the ANC and the EFF kind of reiterated their emphasis on the focus on the fundamentals, the focus on the basics, and with the ANC placing more emphasis on what it has done and what it will do should it be given electoral dominance after May 29th. And the DA kind of echoed its manifesto slogan, the idea behind or the theme of rescuing South Africa with its rescue plan and its solemn pledges. And the IFP, of course, also rubber stamping its idea behind being trusted, the idea of trust us, and the idea of them holding a track record of governance in KwaZulu-Natal. But it must be said that to some extent, the election period was a bit lackluster, and that political parties and their prominent leaders could have done a lot more to appeal to the voter, to convince the voter, and to ensure that at least a good number of voters are decided on who they are going to vote for.
How I wonder, Mbasa, what tools could they have used, in your opinion, to attract a lot more excitement, if you like, from the electorate as far as casting a vote for a political party or an independent candidate?
Well, in my view, political parties would have to go beyond the idea of simply making promises or taking the approach of speaking to people as if they were in a door-to-door campaign. For instance, a lot of young people that you might interact with, you'll find that they are still undecided at this point in time. Some young people are registered to vote, but some of them are saying that they will not go out to vote on voting day because although there are many options, they don't know what they have to offer, and they aren't even sure if they're worth their vote. And so that indicates very clearly that the opposition has not done a very good job in convincing the youth, as well as the governing party that has not been able to convince a large number of South Africans, as we have seen through the recent elections, the consistent decline in voter turnout.
And isn't that an indictment, I suppose, somewhat of our electoral process, where people who would have traditionally voted ANC, for example, some cases DA, where they govern, perhaps do not wish to return their votes to those political parties, and never mind the fact that there are 50 other options on the ballot as far as the national ballot is concerned, people still feel, well, there's no one I can vote for, when clearly there is. All you have to do, and perhaps this is a question I'm asking, what responsibility lies with the electorate here to actually educate themselves as to what the various political parties are offering? It's almost a case of, I'm waiting in my lounge, you must tell me why I should vote for you, as opposed to taking our civic responsibility seriously and actually empowering ourselves with knowledge and information before we go and mark that X next to a political party or independent candidate of our choosing.
Well, you make a good point in that regard. I believe that some of the responsibility does lie with the electorate, and it must be acknowledged that now more than ever, information is more easily available. Although in South Africa we still have quite a huge digital divide, but most of us, I believe, do have access to a television set or do own a television set. But what becomes a problem is, like what you said, a lot of previous voters have this idea of a protest vote hurting their party or somehow showing their frustration. But in reality, to show your frustration as a voter, you need to vote differently. You need to vote for alternatives. You need to assess your own social and economic reality, and you need to be able to look at parties that are speaking about your interests, the interests of your own community and your context. That is now also where you live, and things like access to opportunities. And you need to vote in line with your interests, and not necessarily with which party you love or the vibes you get when the party leader speaks, but to vote in line with your social and economic realities.
Yeah. Many of the political parties and certainly the independent candidates are contesting the elections for the very first time, or at least not having a track record that the electorate can examine and say, well, he said this 5 years ago, and based on what he said and what he's achieved over the last 5 years, I can trust this person with my vote. I'm thinking here of Rise Mzansi, particularly because Sengazo Zimbi is a new player in this space. Bold One South Africa has a different advantage. Musi Maimane and some of those affiliated with Bold One South Africa have been in politics before, and I suppose one could judge their characters because of what they've done before in different political environments. But many new political parties contesting and fighting for our vote here.
Yeah, indeed, the political landscape going into the 2024 election is quite interesting. And I believe that this indicates a maturity in our democracy because, at its center, democracy is based on more options, more variety, and a competitiveness in the electoral process. But I believe that the developments, including the establishment of the MKP, the Mkhonto weSizwe Party, and your Build One South Africa and your Rise Mzansi, that, by the way, has a very vibrant youth component, and the many other oppositions who have not really been in government or in coalition governments, that in a way allows them or enables them to have more radical messaging, or to be more critical of the governing party or the governing or the government without ever being in government. And this is why in most cases the governing ANC can only speak about its track record and what it has done or what it has not done or done efficiently in the 30 years since democracy. So the smaller parties do have quite good chances of getting, for instance, your maybe 5 to 10% of the vote, and this is because they've never been in government, and as a result, they can have more radical and be more critical policy positions and more radical messaging that is going to appeal to, for instance, to youth, to women, and people who are living with disabilities.
Yeah, in fact, I'd argue that some of the political parties have been making outrageous promises and statements, in part because they probably accept that they'll never be in government and therefore will never need to realize the promises that they're making.
Yeah, well, that tends to be the limitation of having quite a large number of political parties in the opposition, to some extent to even have parties that it is known that only cater to a very small or very specific demographic in South Africa, or a very small constituency within South Africa. For instance, political parties like Al Jamaa, political parties like the Patriotic Alliance, these political parties, of course, they are not insignificant, but these political parties have a very specific supporting, and they have a very specific constituency in South Africa. Although it may be growing, or although their messaging might be controversial, but these political parties have a very, very minority focus within South Africa. And to some extent, it can be argued that at the national level, they could never acquire a significant number of seats in the legislature, and hence their promise making might be a bit outrageous for some.
Mbasa, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning and for your insights. Mbasa Venene is a political analyst and political studies lecturer at Walter Sisulu University, reflecting on the final push by the various political parties as they delivered their last rallies ahead of the elections, for some starting today, who have applied successfully for a special vote.